Kansas City police have solved a 31-year-old murder case. Fawn Cox was just 16 years old. And tonight, we know the person responsible for her rape and murder was her own cousin.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're looking at the 31-year-old cold case of 16-year-old Fawn Cox. And our mission today for you is to unpack how an unsolvable crime was finally cracked. Let's start right at the beginning at the crime scene itself, because you really need to understand why this case was so baffling to investigators and just devastating for the family.
Right. It sets the stage for everything that follows.
Yeah. So picture July 26, 1989 in Kansas City. It's a hot, muggy, oppressive summer night. Fawn Cox is 16. She's vibrant. She loves Amy Grant music, and she just got her learner's permit.
She's just a normal teenager.
Exactly. She'd been working the late shift at the Worlds of Fun amusement park. Her mom, Beverly, picks her up around 11 p.m.
And Fawn was exhausted, so she went straight upstairs to bed. Now, normally her younger sisters, Amber and Felisa, they slept upstairs with Fawn.
Right.
But because of the severe heat that night, the younger sisters decided to sleep downstairs where it was cooler. So Fawn was left upstairs, completely alone.
And the sources describe a sequence of events that night that feels like an unintentional locked room mystery, or like a tragic, perfect storm of coincidences.
That's a good way to put it.
Because the killer managed to access her second-story window. Investigators figured out he likely climbed on top of a pickup truck parked outside, or, used the porch roof to hoist himself up. He entered her bedroom, raped her, and strangled her. And he left behind semen on the sheets.
And, the most chilling detail here is the eerie silence. While this horrific violence was occurring, her entire family was sleeping just one floor directly below.
Wow.
And they heard nothing.
You read that, you wonder, how does a struggle happen directly above a sleeping family without waking a single person?
Right, but the house had this incredibly loud, rumbling window air conditioning unit running. It basically created a wall of white noise that drowned out anything happening upstairs. There was, however, one disruption. The family dog became highly agitated during the night.
Oh, right, the dog.
Yeah, whining and restless. But the dog was pregnant at the time, so the family naturally assumed the distress was just related to the pregnancy. They checked on the dog, dismissed the noise, and went back to sleep.
So the pregnant dog acts as this tragic red herring. The reality of what happened upstairs wasn't discovered until 9:30 the next morning. Fawn's alarm clock went off for her next shift, and it just kept ringing.
So Beverly and Felisa went up to check on her.
Yeah, and Felisa actually told a local TV station how she walked over, shook her sister, and yelled, "Come on, get up!" before she even realized Fawn was gone.
It's heartbreaking. And initially, police thought they had a quick resolution. They arrested 3 teenagers. One was even indicted and spent 8 months in jail.
But the case totally fell apart.
It did. Early DNA tests, which were very rudimentary back then, didn't match. And a key witness recanted, so the suspect was released.
Which brings us to the investigators. How did investigators in 1989 know to preserve evidence without knowing what future technology would look like?
Well, what's fascinating here is the incredible value of those 1989 crime scene investigators. Back then, they could only do basic blood typing, right? Like serology.
Yeah, just saying the suspect has type A blood or something.
Exactly, which narrows it down to millions of people. But they meticulously collected and stored the bodily fluids anyway. They essentially created a 30-year time capsule of evidence, just waiting for science to catch up.
And science did catch up. Which brings us to this agonizing 31-year purgatory and the real core of this deep dive, the price of justice. Because with science evolving, like we saw in the Golden State Killer case, you'd expect a quick resolution.
You would, but they hit a massive administrative and financial wall.
First, we have to talk about the family's relentless fight.
What do you think when police say, hey, we can't take money from a family to pay for DNA testing?
We held these fundraisers for Fawn. It is not our money they're taking. It is money that was put forth by people who love Fawn and want to see our family get closure.
It's just like I gave my money for the Crime Stoppers, and they took it and held it, and nothing come out, so they could send it back to me. But they didn't say anything like that they couldn't use it for to pay them. But I think whoever solves it deserves the reward.
For 3 decades, they refused to give up. They paid for billboards across Kansas City with Fawn's face saying, "Do you know who killed me?" and offering a $10,000 reward.
Her sister Amber was tracking online forums. She became so overwhelmingly obsessed with finding the killer that she actually had to hospitalize herself.
I mean, that level of trauma is just immense.
Then genetic genealogy emerges.
Right, which is completely different from regular police DNA testing.
Exactly. Instead of looking for a direct match in a police database, genetic genealogy searches public DNA ancestry databases. You find distant relatives and then build a massive family tree backward to find the killer.
But that process is not cheap.
Not at all.
Right.
The sources break down the costs.
So how much money are we talking about? Well, right now it's $1,500 to get this process started, and you get a rough profile. That's ancestry, hair, eye, and skin color. And then for $3,500, you get the genetic genealogy report. That's all the relatives out there. It can take a tremendous investment by a department to track all of those leads. A department can also spend $1,680 to get a DNA mugshot, and that's where they take the DNA and predict the face of the killer. There has been some really good success with this.
It's about $1,500 just for a rough profile like hair, eye, and skin color.
Okay.
Then $3,500 for a full genealogy report, and another $1,680 if you want a DNA mugshot, which predicts their face.
So we're talking thousands of dollars. And Fawn's family, along with the local nonprofit, they actually stepped up and offered to pay these fees out of pocket.
They had the money ready.
And the KCPD refused to take the money. Okay, let's unpack this, because we need to impartially look at both sides of this dispute. If a family is allowed to donate money to Crime Stoppers for public reward tips, why is it so different to donate that money to a lab for a scientific tip?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't turning down money counterproductive when a literal predator is on the loose?
Well, this raises an important question about the systemic burden on police. From the KCPD side, they argued for equity.
We would be very fearful of getting into a situation where if one family can pay for something and another family can't, then we worry a lot about that. We want to serve everyone equally.
They were deeply worried about creating a system where rich families could effectively buy justice, pushing their cases to the front of the line while poor families couldn't.
Right. Fawn's family was deeply frustrated by that exact point. They felt that if Fawn were, quote, upper class, or a high-class lawyer's daughter, or the governor's daughter, the case would have been solved instantly.
It's a completely understandable frustration, but the police representatives noted it isn't just about a one-time $3,500 lab fee.
Oh, because of the manpower.
Yes. When a lab gives you a genealogy report, it's just a list of distant cousins. It requires a tremendous investment of department manpower detectives traveling, pulling records, interviewing people to track all those genealogy leads down.
So it drains human resources.
Exactly. KCPD felt they needed a comprehensive, fully budgeted program for everyone, not just a piecemeal approach funded by grieving families. Furthermore, they pointed out that cutting police funding makes accessing these advanced DNA tests even harder across the board.
It's just a brutal stalemate. You have the family desperate for answers, and the police constrained by equity and budget protocols.
But thankfully, that bitter stalemate was finally broken.
Yes, and not by private money, but by a sudden influx of federal resources.
Right. The federal government launched Operation Legend, which brought FBI resources, manpower, and most importantly, funding, straight to Kansas City.
And once the FBI funded the genetic genealogy, this unsolvable 31-year-old case was cracked in a matter of weeks.
Weeks, after 3 decades.
It's staggering. But the resolution brought a really bitter truth. Because the match, the killer, was Donald Cox Jr.
Fawn's own cousin.
He was about 5 years older than her. And suddenly, all those weird details from the crime scene make terrifying sense.
They really do. It explains why Fawn never screamed.
Right. A 16-year-old wakes up to a man in her room, and she doesn't scream because she trusted him. She probably thought, oh, it's just Donnie.
And it explains why the killer knew exactly how to access the house, which roof to climb, which window was hers. He knew the layout perfectly.
The family admitted they were sad but relieved. They had quietly suspected him over the years, but didn't know for sure.
It's a relief. There's closure. The answers aren't always what we were asking for, but there's closure.
The fact that it's someone that you know well and it's actually a relative, how is the family dealing with that?
I think we're doing okay. We're doing okay. Just having answers helps.
But think about the tragic irony here. The family spent 31 years fighting to catch this nameless boogeyman, putting up billboards, raising funds.
And the monster was sitting right there at their own family gathering.
How do you even begin to process that level of betrayal?
I don't think you ever fully do. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really highlights the raw power of genetic genealogy. It turns public ancestry databases into the ultimate detective tool.
Yeah, bringing accountability to predators who thought they had gotten away with it.
Exactly. Because Donald Cox Jr. probably knew his DNA wasn't in the police system. But he was caught simply because a distant relative decided to research their family tree online.
But he never faced trial, did he?
No. Donald Cox Jr. died in 2006 from a drug overdose.
Which brings us to the close of this deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
A 31-year nightmare solved by an incredible intersection of relentless family love, meticulously preserved evidence from 1989, and a vital federal funding push.
And it's worth mentioning that KCPD Captain Ben Caldwell actually proposed a solution to this funding issue. He suggested a sustainable, transparent, privately funded program, maybe run by an independent board, that law enforcement could access for cold cases.
That way, they bypass the equity issue entirely.
Exactly. Citizens could fund the science without wealthy families jumping the line.
It makes a lot of sense. So what does this all mean for you, listening to this? True crime stories usually focus on, like, the twisted psychology of the killer.
Or the genius detective.
Right. But the real unsung heroes here are the families who simply refuse to let their loved ones be forgotten. And the scientists who preserve evidence for decades on blind faith. Justice is a marathon, not a sprint.
It really is.
But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. Something we haven't directly stated yet. Consider the bizarre twist of fate regarding the cousin's death.
The overdose in 2006.
Yes. Because his death was considered, quote, suspicious at the time, the medical examiner investigated it and kept a blood sample.
Right.
If he had just died under normal circumstances, his DNA might never have been sitting in a medical examiner's fridge.
It wouldn't have been there.
No. And without that sample, police wouldn't have had the 100% direct confirmation they needed 14 years later to close the case.
That's incredible.
So sometimes, ultimate justice relies just as much on a bizarre, morbid stroke of luck as it does on cutting-edge science.